What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. We are fresh off of the Denver Nuggets winning their first NBA championship ever against the Miami Heat, finishing the series 4-1. Congratulations to Denver and their fans. Really fun playoff run. Statistically and record wise, one of the most dominant runs we've seen in modern history, finishing the playoff 16-4. Matt and Clint are going to be joining me here in just a minute to kind of recap the series, talk about what lessons we can take away, and then look at where Denver and Miami are going. What does this series mean for the players involved, the coaches, the NBA as a whole? All that and more coming up next, and maybe some offseason talk as well. We enter the NBA offseason. We're going to have a couple more podcasts for NBA content coming up here in the next couple weeks, NBA draft stuff, recaps, free agency, all that fun stuff. And we're going to get it kicked off today. Let's go. All right, Matt is here to celebrate our NBA champion Denver Nuggets. Denver finishing off Miami last night, ending the
Celebrate
series
is
4-1.
a strong word. As my background implies how I feel about this entire NBA Finals.
I actually really enjoyed the individual games themselves.
Yeah, no, it's not that the games weren't fun to watch, but man, like I mean, I don't know about you, but almost every game when the game was over, I just was left feeling like, damn, both of these teams sucked tonight.
I think part of it is that by the time we get to this point in the season, we've been playing basketball for 9 months.
Yeah.
So from like October all the way to June. And it does make you think, like, is the season too long? Like, is 82 games too much? Is 9 months, 8 months, 9 months? Because like it always happens in the finals and sometimes in the conference finals that the shooting falls off, like people's legs are tired. You know, the last couple seasons, it wasn't as bad this playoffs, but the last couple seasons we've had like huge amounts of injuries.
I mean, you take a team that like the Heat, like everyone was shocked about, it was basically a team led by role players other than Jimmy, but they were shooting like easily over 40% from three in the playoffs when they weren't shooting anywhere close to. I mean, I think were they literally the worst 3-point shooting in the team in the entire league during the regular season.
I think they were 27th, so they were down,
pretty
they
low.
were down there. Yeah,
they were pretty close.
It was bad.
But like still, the period of time it takes you to get to the NBA Finals is a statistically significant sample size, and for you to see that kind of drop off, like, and you can go to the other side of the court too. Denver had been shooting the three quite well, like all season long, all playoffs long. And I mean, they swept the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals so like they even had time to rest, and you still could see that like they couldn't get the deep shots to go in. And the number one cause of that normally is dead legs. If you're seeing it across several games, it's almost always dead legs.
This sounds weird, but honestly, it was kind of one of the parts of the finals that I liked, is that both these teams had to find other ways to score.
Yeah.
In a modern NBA where we just jack up ridiculous amounts of threes every game, and like for the vast majority of the time, almost all the teams play the same, where they're like, we're going to shoot between 30 and 40 threes every game, whatever.
I appreciate that right up until I see a team like run a good set, or Jimmy does a really good job of drawing the defense in and like makes a really good read and finds someone wide open for a corner three, and just time after time they can't hit it. And at that point, it's like, well, it was beautiful basketball right up until they actually shot the shot. I want to see that go in because I want to see good play rewarded.
Yeah, this was the thing about last night's game, the 94-89 finish, which
God.
94-89 in the modern NBA is oof. It was a good game, but it was not a well played game. Like, and I think you could
Yeah.
say that about the majority of the finals is that
Yeah.
both teams, for large portions of each game, were very sloppy.
I don't think I have ever watched an NBA finals and thought, yeah, the team that won was clearly the better team, but God, did they play terrible. And I felt like that most nights in this series.
Yeah, I mean, credit to both teams defensively too, because like
Mm-hmm.
that was definitely a large part of it. But
Yeah.
it did feel that way where like
Yeah.
especially last night was like the best example that Denver I agree with you. Denver is clearly the better team. I think
Yeah.
at this point we can say Denver was clearly the best team in the league this season. I feel like the
Yeah.
right team won, but I felt like the last three games, either team could have won those games for the most
Yeah.
part. I mean, I think there was one that was a little bit farther
Right.
away, but like,
Well, and it's just like some of it was like, hey, yeah, like Denver, you were the better team. You definitely should have won the NBA championship this year. And I don't know, as a player on the Heat, when you drive into traffic 3 times in a row and get the ball stripped from you, like that's not the other team at that point. You're just making dumb decisions. That's the part that frustrated me so much, is just continually seeing teams, players make bad decisions, and the few times that smart plays were made, their legs were so dead they couldn't hit a shot.
yeah, I mean, I kind of felt like this was the difference in the series too, is that when the threes aren't going in, Denver just had way more answers
Yeah.
than Miami did. And one of the things that ended up being really important that
Mm-hmm.
gets kind of underrated nowadays is that Denver is like really big. They're a
Yeah.
big team. Like Jokic is 7 feet. You got Aaron Gordon is like 6'10. Michael Porter Jr. 6'10. KCP is
That
pretty big.
doesn't
Like,
matter. He's never anywhere near an offensive player. So,
well, it's fair, but the size like ended up mattering from like a rebounding perspective.
yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
they frustrated multiple of the smaller guards on Miami with their
Mm-hmm.
size. Like
Yeah.
it did matter. So, but anyway,
It
like
it did, and not having a guy who's like a legitimate four for them really, really hurt them. All the credit in the world to Miami for making that roster work, not just last year, but like really like the last 4 years. But I think we've kind of hit this point where it's like, yeah, we've seen that the some of the deficiencies on that roster, like you have to make some sort of significant acquisition to address those. When if you get to the Eastern Conference Finals or the NBA Finals, like there's just that last little hump that you can't get over if you do not address it appropriately.
and I hate to tell Heat fans this, but it will not be addressed appropriately this
No,
offseason. I
no,
was
they don't have assets.
well, one, they don't have assets. Two, they don't have money. They have
Yeah,
173 million committed for next year. They have Max Struess and Gabe Vincent both becoming free agents.
yeah,
Both of them were making less than $2 million this year.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be impossible to replace their production for that amount of money. You're paying less than $4 million for Gabe Vincent and Max Strus this season.
Yeah.
So they're both gone, and then you have 173 million committed to this team. Tyler Hero's extension kicks in, Jimmy's extension kicks in.
Yeah.
Like, you're basically bringing back the same team but thinner next season without
Yeah.
those two guards.
And I mean, you can sit there and say, oh, if Tyler Hero's there, maybe this goes differently. But when was the last time Tyler Hero played significant minutes in the playoffs? Or can you rely on him to be there next year? The answer at this point is currently no. You're going to have to. You don't really have much of a choice, but hopefully you get lucky.
It's going to be really difficult for them to do anything when they're paying Kyle Lowry $30 million next season to come off the bench. We're going to talk about Denver's cap situation in a little bit too, because the road ahead of them is somewhat tough as well. But I I can't see Miami like this run by Miami was already special enough to
Yeah.
have the talent level that this roster had and take down teams like the Bucks and the Celtics to get all the way to the finals and to put up a fight in the finals. It's already special, but like really honestly what happens to them is just that the magic kind of ran out at the end here. Like you said, they were shooting well over 40% in the finals. Like I went back
Yeah.
series by series to see what they shot.
Yeah.
They shot 45% from three against Milwaukee. They actually only shot 31% from three against New York, but like I honestly just feel like the Miami roster is just better than New York's roster.
Yeah. I would agree.
And they shot 43% against Boston. So when they're going up against more talented teams on the run here, they shot ridiculously hot from three.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that kind of ran out against Denver. The other thing we saw from Miami in the postseason was that they had the random third guy step up almost every game.
Yeah.
Whether it's like Caleb Martin against Boston or like Duncan Robinson having that 10-point outburst in
Well,
the fourth quarter against the
in
Nuggets.
fairness, at that point, like after like the first round of the playoffs, Caleb Martin was no longer randomly stepping up.
It still seems like he was though, because he just went back to being Caleb Martin in the finals.
Right. No, but it wasn't random until like the finals came up, and then it was like, all right, well, his magic clearly ran out. They're gonna have to get really creative this offseason because yeah, I mean they can't like spend money to get anyone in. They don't have assets to go get anyone. And if they did, they don't have the cap space to make it work unless someone's trying to take Kyle Lowry. And I don't know that anyone's taking Kyle Lowry on that deal. Um, I mean, unless they're real horny, because that man is so caked up. You got
Lowry's
Instagram models jealous of him.
Mariah Mills calling around asking where she can get thick like Kyle Lowry. I could see his contract being used as like the filler in a trade because it's a $30
Mm-hmm.
million expiring.
Yeah.
The only piece they really have to trade right now is Tyler Hero. I don't
And
like
how
what are
much
you getting?
value does he really carry when he's not playing in the important games?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could do like a sign in trade with Struess or Vincent. You could
Yeah.
do like you said, they're gonna have to get creative, but like they don't have the package to go out and get a significant impact player
Yeah.
right now. Like I say that, and then Pat Riley's just gonna come and like assert his manhood on the NBA and bring in like Damian Lillard somehow.
Which would be an incredible compliment. I was talking about this with Clint the other day. Uh, the combination of Dame, Jimmy Butler, and Bam the way that neither one of them like is a ball stopper and that they're all willing to like move the ball to the right place that it needs to be. It's not a one man wrecking crew where one man has to carry the offensive load that we've seen take a toll on both Jimmy and Damian Lillard in the playoffs. This is somehow Kyle Lowry's fault that this can't happen. Because that would be a really, really fun trio to watch together.
It would, but even
It's
if it
not going to
wasn't for
happen.
no, even if it wasn't for Kyle Lowry's money, though, they still don't have the assets to go trade for Damian Lillard.
Right. Yeah. Well, I
And
mean, you could go full LA Clippers, but
they can't though, because they can't do the picks like that.
that's true.
But I mean, they don't have the SGA piece either. I was looking at this regarding Dame the other day. It's going to be such an interesting situation because none of the teams that it would make sense for him to get traded to have the assets to trade for him.
Yeah.
You know, like he said the other day, he doesn't want to go to Boston. Maybe if they put Jaylen Brown on the table, like there's a package there, but like he doesn't want to go
Yeah.
there anyway. The Knicks, like probably not trading for him with Jalen Brunson. The Heat don't have the assets.
Yeah.
Like, so all the teams that would make sense for him to go to don't have the assets to get him.
Yeah.
And all the teams that have the assets to get him, it doesn't make any sense for him to go to because they're not going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about this. I thought it was funny. He doubled down on wanting to stay in Portland, and then he like the two teams that he mentioned, like, yeah, it would be fun to like go play there was, the Heat, which we just said why that's not going to happen. And then the Nets, which the player that he wants to play with there is Bridges, which is the player you would need to give up to get him. So, like, these things just aren't happening. He's staying in Portland. And, maybe a year from now, the asset situation for some teams is different. But right now, there's not anywhere that he's implying that he would like to go that has a realistic route to get him.
I think what happens is that Portland ends up making a move to acquire someone. Whether that's enough and what they give up, like we'll have to see. But like,
Yeah.
I mean, one team I always throw this out there as a dark horse for like everybody, but the Thunder have the assets to basically do anything. I don't see them going all in an
No,
offseason
I
like that.
mean, for them, all those picks are like those dudes who still have all of the fucking beanie babies that they have from growing up. It's just like, no, I just gotta have them.
They're going to be
Like,
valuable someday, I swear.
yeah,
It's kind of funny because the team that has the best trade package for Dame is actually the Portland Trailblazers. It's like, Simon Sharp and 3 is going to be like one of the better packages that
yeah,
anybody can put together. And like, if Portland didn't already have those guys, it would make sense for Portland to like trade for someone
right,
like Dame, right? But so I can see them making a deal. I think that like those 3 assets in particular is probably the best package that's going to be floated out there for anything this offseason.
yeah,
I mean, you never know. Someone could come in over the top. Like that's like the beginning of a really good package. But so
yeah,
I think he stays there and they probably try to bring someone in and then re-sign Grant and like try to build around him one more time. Well, okay, we've spent enough time talking about not the NBA
yeah.
champions.
So before we jump into the NBA champions, I want to throw some kudos out because there's a player that you and I have both just said like, I want to see you be more aggressive. And even though they lost, like he was more aggressive and like Bam had a really, really good series. It I mean, there's not much anyone can really do against Joker, but he was a force on the other end of the floor in every single game in this series. And he was far more aggressive over the course of an entire series than I've ever seen him be. If he can carry that mentality into next year, like that is going to be part of the change that they need to cope with the difficulties that are going to come with the cap situation.
Yeah, so Bam, I think on the surface did have a good series. He was about 22, 12 and a half, and 3.2 per game, but it was inefficient for his standards. He shot 45% from the field on 20 shots per game. Like if
But
I'm the other
you
team,
got to also factor in the fact that not anyone was hitting any threes. So the Nuggets could really just sag into the paint the entire time.
if I'm the Nuggets, I'm okay with Bam scoring 22 points per game if it's taking him 20 shots to do it. He's typically like around 12 to 15 shots a game and shoots like in the mid to high 50s. Like he's, 15 shots a game, 54% this season. The
Yeah,
last couple of years, like 13 shots a game, 57%.
yeah. And the Nuggets did a better job as the series went on of like taking away that pick and roll.
I really felt like the Nuggets listened to the podcast last week
Yeah,
because all the adjustments, like speaking of kudos to us because all of the
yeah.
adjustments we talked about last week, they made. Like they stopped playing that drop coverage on Bam. They were subbing out Michael Porter Jr. a lot earlier, and he was not playing crunch time minutes. They were putting Bruce Brown in there. So I felt like Mike Malone like listened to the podcast. It was like those guys are right. I also want to give kudos to me because I had Nuggets in 5. Here we are, Nuggets in 5. So this is the second year in a row that someone on the podcast got the exact NBA Finals number correct. Pretty good.
Yeah, well done.
So let's talk about the Nuggets though, because they did just win the NBA championship, and we spent the first half hour talking about the Heat and the Trailblazers. Which, like, we're going to talk about the Trailblazers a lot this offseason.
Oh yeah.
They're like one of the teams of the offseason to me. Jokic wins finals MVP. He finishes the playoffs averaging 30, 13 and a half, and 9.5. Shoots 55% from the floor and 46% from three on 3.8 attempts per game. So, like, it's not like he's like shooting one per game. If you add his averages together for points, rebounds, and assists, you get 52.9. My good friend Bill Simmons tweeted this out today. If you combine those three stats, the only players to ever have more than 50 and make the finals: Elgin Baylor, Jerry West, Kareem, Dr. J, LeBron, Wilt Chamberlain twice, and Bill Russell 4 times. The only time it's happened since the 70s was LeBron in 2018, and he got swept by the Warriors. We undoubtedly just watched one of the most statistically dominant postseason runs for an individual player that we've ever had. And it's been a very long time since we've seen someone post that kind of stat line.
But keep in mind, Joel Embiid is the MVP.
Mm-hmm. One of the biggest criticisms of Jokic has also been his defense over the last couple of years, his MVP season. Defensive rating of 108 per 100 possessions in the playoffs.
I think it's fair to say, yeah, you put him out in space and ask him to go one-on-one with, someone who's quicker and faster than him. Yeah, he's not going to be very good there, even though, like, he's better than you think in that situation. But Jokic's basketball IQ is extremely high, and he kind of just puts himself in the right spot at the right time at all times. He doesn't waste steps. So, yeah, he doesn't look like he's going very fast, but when you don't waste any steps, you don't need to look fast to get there fast.
Well, even just like eye test and baseline statistics, Miami couldn't finish over him in the restricted area.
No, well,
They shot less than 50%
yeah,
when he was the primary defender in the restricted area. Like they could
yeah,
not finish at the rim against him.
yeah. No, and that I mean that's certainly a major advantage when you are a 7 footer going against a very small roster.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that that's kind of an overblown criticism of him because we're not playing one on one. He does play good team defense.
Yeah, just for reference, his defensive rating of 108, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Evan Mobley, and Anthony Davis all finished with a defensive rating of 108 the regular season. The defensive player of the year, Jaren Jackson Jr., finished with a 105. So like 108 is really good. He was playing really good defense throughout the entire postseason. And
Yeah.
it's, combine what he did offensively with that level of defense shows you why Denver went 16-4 in this postseason run. So, like, I'm not ready to have a conversation about where Jokic ranks all time. I think, like, we always want to overreact to what we just saw.
Yeah.
And people want to, like, watch the finals and then go, like, oh, yeah, Jokic, he's top 25 all time, or he's like a top whatever guy. But the one thing I did want to say about him is that I feel like he just makes ridiculous stat lines seem normal. Like he dropped a 30
Yeah.
he dropped a 32, 21, and 10 in the NBA finals. And I honestly felt like
Yeah.
it was just like, oh yeah, not a big deal.
It's gonna sound like I'm going off the rails, but it's I'm gonna bring it back. I continually just mentally remarked like, God, Michael Porter Jr. is so bad. Obviously, he's a very good basketball player, but in the context of the NBA, he is a perimeter based player. That is his game. Honestly, watching him in this series, he doesn't actually do any of those things all that well. If he wasn't 6'10", he would never sniff a starting lineup. But Nikola Jokic is so good that he's never had to worry about that because he makes him look like he's going to be like he's a budding star because he makes everything that easy for everyone else around him.
Yeah, I want to circle back to Michael Porter Jr. in just a second here, but the 30-20-10 in the NBA finals was the fifth 30-20-10 playoff game ever. Jokic has 3 of them. There's only been 5, and the other 2 were done by Wilt Chamberlain and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And neither of them were in the NBA finals. Like,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. He makes the game so much easier for everybody around him.
Yeah.
And he puts up these lines. And it's like I watched every minute of every game of this NBA finals. And I found myself thinking at various points throughout the finals, I was like, man, Jokic has like not been doing that much tonight. And it's like, okay, at the end of the second quarter, Jokic has 19, 11, and 5. Like, holy crap. I think that's why like he doesn't get the respect he deserves is because it's not like super flashy, like highlight material for casual fans. He's not like
It's so smooth and he makes it look so easy that you don't even realize it's happening.
I would say if you're like a big basketball fan and you're like really into it, it's like porn watching him.
Yeah.
But like I think for casual fans, what they want to see is like the big dunks and the like long threes and stuff. And it's just like you watch him and I think people are gonna like give me shit for saying this right after he just had such a good finals, but like you watch him and it's not like holy crap, like this guy. Like when you watch Giannis, it's just like he feels dominant. Like he feels physically dominant because he's like
Yeah.
crashing into people, knocking them over, dunking on everybody. Jokic is just like you watch him, and if you know the game, you can watch him and just be like, man, this guy makes the right decision on both sides of the court every single time. Every time. He never makes the wrong play. Ever.
It's remarkable.
It's like Tim Duncan to me.
Tim Duncan wishes he had the processor that Nikola Jokic
No,
has.
no.
That's not a shot at Tim Duncan.
No, I'm not. It's they have such different games. That's not what I mean.
Yeah.
It's just like it's not the flashiest, it's not the most exciting
Yeah.
thing, but it's the best thing.
Yeah, it's those guys are both buttered toast. It's not exciting. But the moment you bite into that buttery toast, you're like, God damn, this is fucking good. Because butter is incredible.
It's not even just buttered toast. It's like perfectly toasted buttered toast.
Yeah.
It's like the perfect piece. It's just, you know what it is? It's black coffee. It's awesome. It's just good. It's like the best thing. It's not flashy. It knows what it is. And it's incredible every single time. It's consistent. He's so good. He's just so good. And he's so impossible to stop. One, because of the size. Two, like he makes shots that nobody else in the NBA can make. He makes passes nobody else in the NBA can make.
Yeah.
And he can do everything on like especially offensively. Like he can shoot from outside, he can bring the ball up, he can post up, he can like offensive rebound. He just his unstoppableness is so unstoppable, and I feel like people just don't appreciate it enough because it's not like prime LeBron flying to the rim and tomahawking a ball
Yeah.
down, or like Steph Curry shooting from 50 feet out or something like that.
Yeah. Quite frankly, if you wouldn't take this over Prime LeBron, then I don't think you quite understand what this is. This is so easy for everyone that, like, yeah, bringing in Delonte West actually might have made Delonte West a star.
I was looking at this, like not only this team, but I was looking at the Nuggets' future. And I was thinking a lot about like, is this the start of something bigger than just one championship? Like, could we see a multiple year run where these guys dominate? Like, what's next for them? So they have all five starters under contract for next season and beyond. They also have Christian Brown under contract, which let me tell you that a name has never confused me as much as Christian Brown. It's spelled Braun. To me, that's Braun. I feel like
it's wrong to literally everybody else.
It's Braun to everyone. I feel like you have to do like a Rick Ross accent to get it right. Where you're like Brown. Not even a giggle. So it's Christian Brown. The one problem I'm seeing that they're going to run into is that Bruce Brown, last name spelled correctly,
Yes,
has a $7 million player option for next season. If I can promise you anything in the offseason, it is that Bruce Brown is declining that player option.
Oh, yeah. As he should.
How much money Bruce Brown has made in his career so far? Like total career earnings.
12 million or less.
That's a good guess. He's made $15 million so far. That's it. He's going to get paid like at least 15 million per season this offseason. I don't know that Denver can bring him back unless they do something to clear some space. They have about 162 million committed, assuming that he opts out, and they have non-bird rights on him, so they can't sign him for more than like a mid-level exception. I say all this to say they are paying Michael Porter Jr.
There it is.
the same amount that they're paying Jamal Murray. They're paying both of them $33 million next season. I forgot that they maxed Michael Porter Jr. after his rookie deal.
I would not let him get more than 10 minutes per game on my roster. At least that roster. Like, he's not bringing anything that the other guys don't already do as well, if not better.
This is what happens with NBA teams, though, with like the way that contracts are set up. When you have a rookie who's good or like one that you project to be good, like because they didn't
Yeah.
really know what they had with him still when his rookie contract was coming up.
Yeah.
He had been injured a lot. He had that weird back thing, like it was going back and forth. They had to max him or else they would have lost him. Someone else would have done it. But when you do it, and it's funny to say that it didn't work out because they just won an NBA championship. But when you do it and the guy is not a max guy, these are the type of sacrifices you have to make. Like they're going to have to
Yeah.
let Bruce Brown walk
Yeah.
and sign mid-level guys to fill that spot unless they can like trade Michael Porter Jr. somewhere. But like I don't know what you're getting and what that deal looks like.
You might get Jordan Poole back.
It's kind of funny because like I mean you could do that though. I think Jordan Poole is actually making less, and that might give you enough money to sign Bruce Brown. So maybe that is like the right move. I saw a lot of people coming out and defending Michael Porter Jr.
They shouldn't. They're dumb. Don't listen to any of them.
Like I know Mike Malone has to, but there's been a lot of like talking heads that are like, oh well, even though he didn't play that good offensively, like he had an impact.
Yeah, he did. Not the one that you're implying.
So he finishes the finals 9.6 points per game, 8.4 rebounds, zero point 0.8 assists, which is like honestly high for him. I'm going to tell you who he reminds me of in a minute. Shoots 33% from the field, 14% from three. An offensive rating of 88. The biggest and best adjustment that Michael Malone made after the first two games of the NBA Finals was honestly playing him less minutes and playing Bruce Brown and Christian Brown more minutes. And it's so brutal to like pay this guy $30+ million. They're paying him between 33 and $40 million for the next 4 seasons. When like he literally couldn't play and you had to play your $6 million guy and your $3 million guy because they were that much better than him.
Yeah.
And now Bruce Brown's going to walk, and I don't know how they go about replacing that spot.
Yeah, I mean, like you talked about like how the last 3 games of the series like really could have gone either way. Bruce Brown was a huge part of most of those games going their way.
Let me put it this way, because they won a couple of those games by double digits. There were times in those games where it could have gone either way.
Yeah.
And the thing that swung them was that Michael Porter Jr. was taken out of the game.
Yes. And Bruce Brown at multiple points, like obviously like his defense was a big part of kind of swinging the tides. But I mean, he had multiple points where offensively what he was bringing was really what they needed. And I mean, shit, Bruce Brown kind of closed out the game, closed out the series for them, really, if you think about it.
You know who Michael Porter Jr. reminds me of?
I am dying to find out.
Marvin Bagley.
Oh, God.
The 0.8 assist thing on a
Yeah.
team that has the kind of ball movement that they have.
Yeah.
He's such a black hole. He's a ball stopper. There was like a meme on TikTok all season. There was a guy who was just like, every time Michael Porter Jr. gets the ball, he shoots. So I was watching for it in the finals and I was like, yeah, like he really does shoot every time he gets the ball, or he tries to at least, like to the detriment of the team. And
Yeah.
I know we should be celebrating Denver more because they just won an NBA title. And I hope the Nuggets fans are out there enjoying it. But I'm not going to get over the fact that they're going to pay him $33 million next season while Bruce Brown plays somewhere else. I'm not going to get over that.
Hey,
Uh,
I would love to have Bruce Brown back in Detroit.
yeah, I could see
That's
him.
it's another case of Detroit not knowing what they had.
I could see, someone like the Spurs grabbing him. Like we talked about the Spurs last week.
Yeah.
Uh, the Rockets have a bunch of money. Like a lot of teams that could really use him have a lot of money this offseason. So my other notes on the Nuggets, I was asked if I wanted to apologize to Aaron Gordon after game 4 where he dropped 27 points. He promptly followed that up by dropping 4 points in game 5. Uh, so that's going to be a no for me. I have a hot Denver take, and I feel like I'm zagging super hard on the Nuggets after we should be talking about how they just had one of the most dominant postseason runs in modern history. Um, and I mean, this is more of like a compliment to Jokic than I do as a diss to the Nuggets. But my hot Nuggets take is that almost everyone else on Denver is overrated because of how good Jokic is. All their other guys are streaky.
Mm-hmm.
Jamal Murray is a good example of this. And I'm not saying Jamal Murray is not a good player because he's great,
Yeah.
but he averaged 26 points per game in the playoffs, which is excellent. But if you look at the game log, like I'll use his game log from the finals: 26 points, 18 points, 34 points, 15 points, 14 points. Because Jokic is so good and because this team was so good this season, I feel like people want to rank these players closer to their ceiling than they do to like their averages or like what they actually bring. And like, I feel like the right range for Murray right now is that he's like, somewhere around 20th if you were doing like the best players in the league. Somewhere like maybe 18 to 22, somewhere in that range.
I will wait until we actually like sit down and go through it to comment on that. It's yeah. I know that every time we do it, it's like, oh yeah, no, that player, okay,
Mm-hmm.
that player. So
No, I'm just like off the top of my head though. That's kind of like,
yeah,
you know, maybe high teens, maybe 20 to 25 somewhere. But I feel
yeah.
like the narrative around him right now is that he's like a top 10 dude after these finals. That it's just not true.
I think the reality is he's a guy who's on the fringe or sneaking into the back 10 spots, but him even sniffing top 15 is very hyperbolic.
Yeah, I mean, it's like his ceiling though is that of a top 15 player,
Yeah, but
but it's the consistency.
you don't get that 4 out of 5 nights. And that's the big difference.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think our NBA top 30 when we do it this offseason is going to start with Jokic. I
You
think
think
that's pretty easy.
it's not Embiid?
Well, I mean, Embiid was MVP this season. I don't know if you know that, but yeah, I mean, it's still like, it's funny because like the top 3, it's probably going to be the last 3 finals MVPs in some order. It's like Jokic, it's Giannis, it's Curry.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because after a player wins a finals MVP like this and has a dominant run like Jokic has, usually like all the discourse around them changes. And like maybe it's just because I wasn't having a bunch of Jokic debates the last couple of seasons. I was just like, yeah, he's awesome. He's the MVP of the league. He's awesome in the play. He's just awesome.
Yeah.
We've had him as a top 3 guy for years now. It's just, I don't feel like this championship changes my opinion of him that much because my opinion of him was already so high.
Yeah, I know. I don't think this championship really changed my opinion of anything. I still think the Nuggets go as Jokic goes. I still think Jokic is a dominant force every night. I still think that Aaron Gordon is at best a coin flip on any given night, and Michael Porter Jr. sucks ass. This is a team that they if they get hot, you're not beating them, and if they don't get hot, okay, well Jokic is still going to manufacture points, so they're never going to be an easy out. But the supporting cast around him isn't one that I'm like enamored by in any sort of way.
Yeah, I just think it's funny, like when Giannis won the championship a couple years ago and he was Finals MVP. It was like such a relief for Giannis fans
Yeah,
because it was starting to get to the point where we were questioning, like, oh, he's been MVP a couple times, but he can't get it done in the playoffs. Like he always comes up short in the
yeah,
playoffs. We never had those conversations about Jokic.
nope,
And like part of it is because his supporting cast the last couple seasons, especially with Murray out, has been
yeah,
bad. But also like he's delivered in the playoffs every single year.
yeah,
I think about that series he had with Dame where they both averaged like 40 points a game, or putting up just absolutely ridiculous stats on each other. I don't feel any different about the NBA today than I did before the finals started. Like the only thing that really changed my mind about the playoffs is that I was concerned this season about Denver's defense, and they like really kicked it into high gear in the playoffs, a gear that I didn't
yeah.
know that they had, but like that was the
And
difference between them getting
right,
over the hump and not. Is like you have Jamal Murray and you played excellent defense.
yep. And the takeaway for that is wherever you had Michael Malone in your rankings of NBA coaches, move him up.
Yeah, it's just funny, and it's because like Denver is a smaller market for basketball, and that like Jokic, even though he was MVP 2 years in a row, didn't receive like a ton of national spotlight. But I don't feel like I'm going to have more Jokic conversations today than I did last year or the year before. It's just, every Jokic conversation I've had for the last couple of years has just been like, yeah, man, Jokic is fucking awesome.
Yeah,
Pretty much it. The only time I've really even talked about Jokic a ton recently is that we were both like, why is this guy not MVP? Like, he's clearly the MVP. And I feel like we're on the
well,
right side of history with that one.
obviously we need to have a conversation with Stephen A. Smith, who was not aware that a Jokic post up is like the most efficient play in the history of basketball.
I feel like if you've been having Jokic debates, either one, you're an idiot because you were arguing that Embiid should have been MVP over him, or two, you're arguing with idiots. Like this is how I feel, and this is like a very lofty comparison. This is how I feel about Tom Brady being the GOAT. If you're like, oh yeah, I think someone else is the GOAT, I automatically disregard every single other opinion you have. Like if you're gonna sit here and like fight me on Jokic being awesome, even before the championship, just like no, I'm out. I'm out of this conversation. I'm not having this conversation with you
Yeah,
because he's been a monster for years now. It's just that now he got it done at the highest level, but he's been getting it done in the playoffs for years.
it's one of those things. I've said it with the Brady goat thing. Like if you have to make an argument otherwise, then your argument's probably wrong because everything else tells us that that's the thing, right? With Brady, it's like until someone like firmly unseats him, you can't argue that they haven't passed him. Then there's no argument. until you can firmly say, yeah, no, Jokic isn't the most dominant and dynamic player in the NBA, even though it's the least flashy game that we've ever seen. You don't really have an argument because no one else is doing what he's doing.
I don't even know if it's the least flashy. Like, it's not as flashy as like the
Yeah,
guys that you're
it's
arguing
it's it's
against, but
it's
like,
yeah, it's flashier than like Tim Duncan's.
I love Tim Duncan's game though. I love it. So, uh, but that is it for us. As always, Fouled Out can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up on Twitter at Fouled Out Sports. You can find Matt on Twitter at Matador_defense. You can find our videos on TikTok at Fouled Out Sports Podcast. It's a long name, but you can't miss it. We are coming back next week to do the NBA mock draft. We're going to mock like the top 10 and talk about the lottery, talk about some of the prospects and how we feel about them, as well as what we think each team should do. Then after that, we're going to come back to a little free agency offseason stuff and a draft recap, and then on to some other fun things. So, Matt, any other thoughts on the NBA Finals before we sign off?
Glad that I don't have to watch more bad finals basketball. It was like fun and painful at the same time, and I don't know if I could have done another 2 games of it.
Yeah, I think the only problem now is that we have is regular season baseball until September. And I love baseball, but the Red Sox are 34-34 right now, so it's not I'm not particularly keen on watching a ton of it, but we'll be here for you guys throughout the little sports layoff. And then, of course, when we start getting into July and August, we'll start having our NFL divisional previews. We'll have the top 10 quarterbacks for the season, all sorts of fun stuff, but a couple more basketball podcasts first. So,
For sure.
all right. Congrats to the Denver Nuggets. Everybody go enjoy it. Go celebrate Jokic. He is absolutely incredible. And I hope that everybody appreciates that as much as we have for the last couple seasons.
Yeah, there's honestly, like, unless you're a Denver fan, there's no need to celebrate the championship. Just celebrate Jokic. Like, we should all be doing that.
He is awesome. But all right, my friend, I will see you soon.
Yep. Later.
Bye, guys. Bye, Mom.